Men in Black is a 1997 sci-fi action comedy movie that was so good, so successful that it spawned 2 direct sequels, an animated show and a legacy sequel, all of which are varying in quality, but the fact remains that no matter how crappy some of the follow-up material was, this movie is still universally adored and undeniable. It is not tainted 1 ounce, and there's a lot of reasons as to why. I mean, starting with the most obvious and surface level, the cast. A seasoned Tommy Lee Jones pairing up with a fresh Will Smith who's just entering his prime is a recipe very specific but very delightful. I mean, Smith was on the rise and had already done his rap career, done The Fresh Prince, Bad Boys and Independence Day, but this is arguably where he became the Will Smith we know. He was an actor before, but since this role, he was a movie star, and it becomes so evident why. Also, did you know this is a Marvel movie? Blade gets a lot of love and respect for being the first big superhero movie from Marvel, but this came out a year prior and in my opinion is a lot better despite me absolutely loving Blade. Anyway, Jones and Smith play the perfect straight man and funny man. It's a classic comedy trope that also serves as great acting material here for the dramatic elements too, since both actors can really bring those moments together and ground the story beyond all the insane sci-fi elements and comedic beats. But before continuing with the cast, let's get to the actual movie for a moment. So in the intro credits, we follow this bug that eventually gets squished and the driver says,
"Goddamn bugs,"
which is great foreshadowing for the movie, but then it's revealed that the driver is transporting illegal immigrants, or as some would say, illegal aliens, which again is a great little detail to show us how insignificant that crime is in comparison because of what we're about to see. So we move on, find out one of these guys is an actual alien, and the practical suit on display is insanely cool and shows us immediately what these creatures are capable of, as well as the secrecy of the aliens' existence. We see a very exciting looking gun, we hear about some intergalactic politics, we see the cleanup crew, the neuralizer and its effects, the partner dynamic, and we even get some beautiful setup for the ending to do a powerful callback. This intro sequence is so jam-packed with information and world building. In under 6 minutes you learn mostly everything you need to know when entering this world, and yet it is done so effortlessly and with such brevity and quality pacing that all of this stuff is exciting and new, cool, and never feels overwhelming, because they do something clever. Immediately after feeding you all of this context using the good old show not tell method, they give you time to process that as we cut to Jay in a classic police chase that we've seen a million times in other movies, and also with our past experience with Smith in Bad Boys, this is a huge slice of regularity to cut up the two worlds and show the polar opposites J and K are. It's also quite smart to introduce us to Jay secondly, so we can spend more time with him moving forward as he's the audience surrogate in this story. He's entering this insane world of aliens and secret agencies at the same time as us, plus Smith brings so much of his charm and star power that made him a star in the first place. And then we cut away from him after this chase and after he gets a tiny glimpse of what's to come, so we can get introduced to our villain, played by Vincent D'Onofrio, most famously known as Kingpin in the Daredevil show and in a movie of Will Smith, Tommy Lee Jones and Rip Torn. The fact that I can say that Vincent D'Onofrio gives the best performance by a mile is super impressive, because this is a movie where everyone is on their A game, but D'Onofrio is just on another planet, forgive the pun. This is the most unhinged performance I may have ever seen in my life. I don't know if he got direction to act this way or not, but it's truly a stroke of genius and makes what could just be a regular and forgettable villain a truly timeless one. You may forget the name, you may forget his motivations, but you will never forget the physical performance and line reading. Anyway, cutting back to Jay, who finally meets Kay, and I sincerely love their first true interaction where they meet Jeeves. It's a brilliant moment full of tension, wonder, humor, and world building. Basically everything that makes this movie work in one short scene, which then evolves into the MIB audition process scene, and this is where we get some of the great filmmaking and technical display. Like, these sets are amazing. This waiting room and the whole MIB headquarters is just so unique and memorable. These images stick in your head, and when an image sticks like this, it helps remind remind you of all of its context and what filled those rooms, which in this case is just more incredible comedy and yes, world building. This story is ever expanding and makes you realize why there was so much additional content in this world after this film, because it is just so rife with potential as this film builds an infinite and fun universe that we want to live in more. We have so much great effects that still hold up by today's standards and great jokes that have aged perfectly, which is difficult for a 90s comedy to manage. I mean, this whole sequence in the audition is great, but there's just such a beautiful mix of comedy and it's so patient with it, which sets it apart. For example, in this just one little sequence, there's genuinely well written jokes like why he shot little Tiffany, there's situational jokes like the pulling of the table, there's physical comedy in the way that they're all trying to fill in these forms, there's comedy in the way that lines are delivered, like how Will Smith delivers this line about Captain America and the best of the best of the best and all that. It's not a one-trick pony is what I'm trying to say. There's slapstick and screwball comedy. It's so diverse in just the ways it makes you laugh. There's so much evident effort going into it, and because they're employing so many different methods of delivering you something as simple as chuckles, it makes every moment so fresh and unpredictable still. Also, though the little Tiffany bit is a great gag, it also perfectly demonstrates why Jay is perfect for this job. It's a great example of efficient writing when we can deliver both a great scene of comedy, character progression and story context all in a couple of lines, and so many of the scenes in this film play that way. Everything is doing multiple things at once. Usually it's comedy mixed with something else, like this scene at the morgue that doubles the comedy with throat lumping tension, which is honestly super impressive that they make both of these emotions exist simultaneously, which is mostly down to great performances and direction, but the script really cannot be undervalued here. And though this film does mostly rely on show not tell, there is one sequence with a bunch of exposition, but it's earned. They do so much of showing us this world that when they eventually do just get to explaining some of it, it's completely justified and acceptable. Plus, it then shows us these little freaks that we all love, and by this point this is the third type of alien we've seen, which really demonstrates to the audience the diversity of this universe. It isn't one type of alien we're dealing with, it truly is a galaxy of them and makes this universe feel so unbelievably huge and full. And I'm not going to go through the whole film scene by scene because a lot of what I've already said can just be applied to every scene that follows. Great effects, good comedy, smart and subversive writing, fun performances, great tension, well designed sets and an overall fun time. But I do just want to point out that this one moment where Kate is explaining to Jay why he should take the job, he says the line,
"A person is smart. People are dumb, panicky, dangerous animals, and you know it."
Which is a line I repeat so much in my actual life because I think it concisely puts across a very complex idea, but this whole speech is incredible. Just listen to this.
1,500 years ago, everybody knew the Earth was the center of the universe. 500 years ago, everybody knew the Earth was flat, and 15 minutes ago, you knew that people were alone on this planet. Imagine what you'll know tomorrow.
It's truly powerful stuff that leads into this beautiful little moment where Jay just sits and contemplates everything whilst we also get to take a moment to breathe as an audience and process. The film is just paced so exceptionally well and there's just so many great quotables that I can't even begin to list them, but even still there's no point because you already know them. Now fast forwarding everything else in this movie, we finally get to the final battle, and though it is relatively small scale, I mean it's essentially two unarmed guys versus a big cockroach that is just trying to leave the whole time. They have set up the stakes of this small conflict so well that it truly does feel like the world's fate is being decided in real time. Plus the way they defeat the big bad cockroach is so smart and fun, truly inventive stuff that makes it stand out among its peers. Not to mention this ending has only gotten better with age, as nearly all new sci-fi movies and mainstream action comedies have such big and bombastic third acts that this truly does feel unique and special. Then we get that callback I was talking about earlier, and I love how Kay recites his old partner's speech, and at first he's just saying the lines, but then there's this moment where he actually starts to believe the words. It's simple but beautifully subtle acting. But then of course we can't end on a down note, so we get to see K reunite with this woman he left behind, and J gets Agent L as a partner just before truly seeing the scale of the universe in which we are cruelly insignificant in. It's a great way to finish before we cut to the credits and hear the infamous Men in Black song performed by Will Smith. Overall, this movie is a classic. It's over before you know it, and it is a guaranteed good time. Every time. There's a reason they are still making attempts at this franchise, and they're still trying to capitalize on the goodwill of this first movie. Because it is still talked about today. It is still as good today as it was in '97, and it has a magic that just can't be recaptured. There are other grand and much bigger sci-fi epics that everyone knows and loves, like Avatar, 2001: A Space Odyssey, Dune, Star Wars, and The Adventures of Pluto Nash, but I don't think any of them quite capture the same kind of magic that Men in Black does. And I would go as far as to say I truly think it is the perfect sci-fi experience, and by extension the perfect sci-fi movie. But that's just me. What do you think? Have you seen Men in Black? If so, what do you think? If not, what are you doing? And whether it's a classic sci-fi action comedy starring Will Smith and Tommy Lee Jones or not, as always, keep watching movies.